The following story has been brought to you by StoriesToInspire.org.
There was an individual who kind of spent a good part of his life in Buenos Aires. He was part of the Shuva Yisrael community, a special community over there. His name was Aroy Nachmud. Eventually, towards the end of his life, he moved to Eretz Yisrael, and then he passed away when he was an elderly gentleman. Sadly, when he was nifter, he left no descendants, and they were trying to figure out what to do for his kavura. They're trying to figure out what to do for his burial, because there wasn't any caver, there was no plot left for him, and it doesn't seem like there were many funds. So they contacted the social services, the Bituach Leumi or whatever organization it is in Eretz Yisrael, to see what they could do. And they said, we have a fund that's set up for people who need a place to be buried. We'll get him a plot on Har HaMenuchos. And when it came the day of the Levaya, that day when to bury him, a few people came, some stragglers, people who knew him, some people who knew him local, people from Argentina. Amongst them was one of the Nesiim, happens to be one of the heads of the community of Shuva Yisrael, Rabbi Solomon, who happened to have been visiting Eretz Yisrael. At that point, he was there as well, but it was a small group of people. They show up at Har HaMenuchos, the Chaver Kadisha brings them there, and they realize that the municipality hadn't given him a cave, or they didn't give him a grave. They gave him a mausoleum, elevated above the ground, which is not congruent with halacha. They didn't know what to do. They're not burying him shalei al pi halacha. What are they supposed to do? So they quickly pick up the phone and they try to call, the Misrat HaPnim or Bituach Leumi, whoever it is, and to tell them, listen, we can't bury this manner, it's not pi halacha. And they laughed them off and they said, this is what we have, this is how it goes. You don't like it, figure something else out. They didn't have any other options. They were going to take him to Har Hazeisim. There's going to be no one there for his kavur, and if they do, it's a 60,000 shekel plot. Who's paying for that? And Har HaMenuchos, there's barely any graves. If there is, they're 100,000 shekel each. Well, what are they going to do? Imam should have no idea what to do. And they're sitting there, Meisei Mutul Lefanav, with the deceased, and they have nowhere to bury him. So one of the fellows in the Chaver Kadisha says, listen, there's a guy here in Yerushalayim, it's very Isaac. He's an incredible doer, and he tries to help people in difficult situations, particularly these type of situations. Call him, maybe he can help. They call him, and he hears the situation. He's very distressed. He says, let me make some phone calls back and forth and back and forth. A few minutes later, one of the guy's phones rings, and it's this fellow, and he says, you're not going to believe it. I got him a caver on Har HaMenuchos, and you don't even have to pay anything. Somebody gave it. They were ecstatic. The fellow was going to be able to have Kuras Yisrael, be able to have an appropriate burial. Right before they're about to bury him, Rabbi Solomon gets up and says, I just want to say something. And he says the strangest sentence. He turns to the nifter Rabbi and he says to him, Rabbi, here, the Rebbeinu Shalom just gave you back your keyring. Those assembled looked at him. That's a hesped. And what's he even saying? After the Kvura, he shared with the assembled something absolutely remarkable about Rabbi Nachmud. Over 40 years earlier, when the Shuva Yisrael organization was just in its infancy, literally, they needed to build a building, and they needed a building really badly. And they found this spot, but the spot that they found was too small, and the only way to really build for the future so they could become this beautiful community that they are right now was to buy the plot of land, the big lot that was next door. The problem was it was owned by a Jewish fellow, and the guy didn't really want to sell it. And finally they convinced him that it'll be a big schus, and he says he'll sell it, but he wants a certain amount of cash down. And they didn't have the money, they had no idea what to do. Rabbi Nachmud at that point was a well-to-do man, and he heard about this. And he went over to the Rav of Shuva Yisrael, and he said to him, I hear that we need to buy the lot, and I hear it's an issue. I just bought myself a beautiful, fancy car. He says to him here, and he takes the keyring, and he gives it to the Rav. And he says to the Rav, sell this car, that'll be part of your down payment. Hopefully you'll be able to take it from there. And that's why Rav Yitzchak Solomon says to him at the Kvura, he says to him, Rabbi Aharon, here, the Rebbe Hashem just gave you back your keyring. You were so incredibly dedicated, and you were so Ibrig Gabin, to make sure that we got a plot of land, that we got a lot, so we could build a beautiful kehillah, a beautiful community, that in your time of need, the Rebbe Hashem gave you a lot as well.
Enjoyed this story? Come again. Bring a friend. StoriesToInspire.org